Most lives do not change because of one great decision. They change because of small thoughts, repeated quietly. James Clear, in Atomic Habits, wrote that our lives are shaped less by ambition and more by what we do consistently, often without thinking. And yet, despite knowing this, many people wake each morning feeling stuck, working harder, trying more, and still arriving at the same place. Not because they lack effort, but because they never question what is quietly holding them back. Today's story is about a man named Jacob, who slowly realized that the smallest patterns in his daily life were silently deciding the direction of his future. For years, Jacob believed poverty came from a lack of money. That was the mistake. Every morning, Jacob woke before the city stirred. Outside his small rented room, the street lay still beneath the pale blue of early dawn. A stray leaf scraped along the pavement in the wind. Somewhere in the distance, a sparrow called from a power line. Jacob sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the familiar crack running down the wall. He already knew how the day would feel, heavy before it began. His phone vibrated softly beside him. News headlines, messages, other people's lives moving forward. He scrolled without thinking. By the time he stood up, his mind was already tired. Jacob worked hard, longer hours than most. He skipped breaks, stayed late, carried responsibility quietly. And yet, nothing seemed to move. His savings remained thin, his opportunities unchanged. Each month felt like a loop, different dates, same ending. At night, he told himself the same promise. When things improve, I'll finally change. But improvement never came. One evening, after a long shift, Jacob took a different route home. The main road was loud, so he drifted toward a quieter street lined with old trees. Their branches arched overhead, leaves whispering in the evening breeze. At the corner cafe, warm light spilled onto the sidewalk. A single table sat beneath a fig tree. There, as always, an old man rested in the same chair. Steam rose gently from a small porcelain cup, the scent of coffee mixed with damp earth and crushed leaves. The old man stirred slowly, watching the last of the daylight fade between the buildings. Jacob had passed him many times before. The man never seemed rushed, never distracted, as if time slowed slightly around him. That night, Jacob stopped. They spoke about ordinary things, the weather cooling, the changing season, work. Without realizing it, Jacob began to complain about money, about exhaustion, about how nothing ever seemed to improve, no matter how much effort he gave. The old man listened, eyes steady, fingers wrapped around the warm cup. After a long pause, he spoke. "You're not poor because you lack money," he said quietly. "You're poor because you repeat the same day." Jacob smiled politely, unsure whether to laugh. He didn't understand. The old man lifted his coffee, took a slow sip, and nodded toward the tree above them. A leaf drifted down, landing softly on the pavement. "Every morning," he continued, "you begin in reaction, to noise, to pressure, to other people's lives. Before the day belongs to you, you give it away." He set the cup down. "That habit," he said, "keeps people exactly where they are." Jacob walked home under the trees, the sound of leaves crunching beneath his shoes. The old man's words echoed, not loudly, but persistently. "You repeat the same day." That night, Jacob lay awake longer than usual. Not anxious, not restless, just aware. For the first time, he noticed how often his thoughts drifted toward the future as an escape. One day things will improve, without ever touching the present. Morning came quietly. The phone vibrated, as it always did. Notifications waiting, demands lining up before he had even stood. Jacob reached for the screen and stopped. Not out of discipline, not from strength, but from curiosity. What happens if I don't begin this way? He sat on the edge of the bed, unsure of what to do with the silence. 5 minutes felt longer than expected. His mind searched for noise, for urgency, for something to react to. Nothing came. Light filtered through the window. A bird landed briefly on the railing outside. Jacob noticed his breathing slow, not because he tried, but because nothing was chasing him. That day didn't feel easier, but it felt different. At work, his habits resisted change. His hand still moved toward distraction. His mind still wandered. More than once, he caught himself slipping back into the familiar rhythm of rushing, postponing, waiting. And each time, he remembered the leaf drifting down beside the cafe table. Every day begins somewhere. So he chose again. Not perfectly, not consistently, just deliberately. Some mornings, the 5 minutes happened. Some mornings, they didn't. Some days, he completed the one task he had chosen. Other days, he failed quietly and moved on. There was no excitement, no sudden confidence, no visible progress. But something subtle began to form. Jacob noticed how often he had been waiting for motivation before acting, using exhaustion as permission to remain unchanged. Now, action came first. Motivation followed later, if at all. Days passed, then weeks. The world around him stayed the same. The same streets, the same cafe. But Jacob no longer experienced his days as a blur. He moved with intention, not urgency. He finished what he started. He stopped apologizing internally for his own presence. When responsibility came, it felt natural, not like a reward, but a reflection of how he now showed up. And for the first time, Jacob understood something quietly powerful. Change had not required effort. It had required attention. Months later, he passed the cafe again. The fig tree stood quietly, leaves moving with the breeze. The table was empty. No coffee, no old man. But the lesson remained. Wealth, Jacob understood, does not begin with money. It begins with attention, with ownership of small moments, with refusing to live the same day on repeat. Most people wait for their lives to change before they change themselves. A few begin quietly, and their lives never look the same again. If you start seeing yourself as someone capable of growth, even small steps begin to matter. And over time, those steps lead somewhere new. Sometimes the future does not change all at once. So don't underestimate what you are capable of becoming. Even if you are still learning, even if progress feels slow, your thoughts today are building your tomorrow. If this story helped you see things more clearly, tap the like button to support the channel. Share what you learned in the comments, and pass this story along to someone who might need it. We'll see you in the next story.